before this episode can really start, I got to reveal my starting weight. Before I do have to say that I'm very happy with myself. I always have been and always will be. I may not have been happy with what I was working at Walmart, or just because I was kind of like, this is not what I want to be doing with my life, is working in the stock room at Walmart. And that's why I'm standing in front of this camera right now, is to be revealing my starting weight at 340. That is my big number that I want to get down to something that I can live with. Because I'm just trying to improve my station in life, like I said in the announcement video. And my mantra for this entire project is, there's always room for improvement. Really, that's it. I don't want to bother you with any more of this, so I'm just going to hop right into the video and let's begin. Welcome to the 2-Ton Nerds. As always, my name is Max James. In this episode of the TTN Presents, it's the first ever episode of Let's Watch True Blood, a series retrospective look back at all 70 episodes of True Blood. In this episode, I will be talking about the first 2 installments of the True Blood series. I do believe the episodes are called Strange Love and as well as The First Taste. And these 2 first episodes are amazing, especially the opening sequence where these 2 college students are just kind of traveling along this road, and they see a sign like, "Yes, we have True Blood." So they stop and they start inquiring the clerk behind the counter about V-Juice and about vampires in Louisiana. And it turns out that Louisiana is kind of like the mecca of all vampires. And it's really cool because it's playing like the clerk behind the counter is a vampire. And he's doing this accent and he's decked out in goth clothes. While at the same time that there's this guy in the back who's dressed in camo and blue jeans and a trucker hat. He looks like he's getting right by a big pack of beer. And he's just kind of like, oh, what? He's kind of keeping his eye on the situation. And it turns out that the guy who's buying the beer is actually a vampire, and he's buying a case of synthetic blood called True Blood, so they don't need to feed off the humans. And it's really cool because it's like, don't judge a book by its cover kind of thing, and it has one of the best openings of any show, because when right before the credits roll, the vampire has his fangs out and he's like, "Have a nice day," and he has like these really big eyes and you can really see the whites of his eyes, and he just walks off like, "Oh, nothing happened." And it was quite funny. And then the credits roll, which is a really cool credit sequence. And then after the credits roll, that's where the real fun begins. That's when we start getting introduced to all the characters of the show. You get to meet Sookie, the telepathic waitress, Dawn and Arlene, 2 fellow waitresses who Sookie works with, Lafayette, the black gay cook of Merlot's, and as well as Sam Merlot, who actually owns the place of work. And then you meet Tara, who's working at this kind of like Home Depot kind of place, where she ends up like going off on a customer and quitting, and it's hilarious. And then she ends up working at Merlot's, and then that's where it then you also meet Jason Stackhouse in a more graphic extracurricular scene where him and Maudette Pickens are kind of engaging in some extracurricular activities, and he happens to come across 2 fang marks, and that she reveals that she's been bitten by a vampire, only to be paid for her services for being bit for like, I think $1,000 is the amount she was paid. And Jason's kind of curious, and it's really funny, and he's like, I videotaped it, so they end up watching it and they kind of reenact what they see on screen, and Jason kind of gets way into what they were doing, ends up strangling her, and reveals that she's videotaping this entire thing. So we don't see Jason for a little while until he comes back into Merlot's and to come after Dawn. And it's quite hilarious and it's funny. And I mean, the first 2 episodes have plenty of humor. And then that's where we meet Bill for the first time, is in Merlot's. And Sookie's drawn to him immediately because obviously she can't hear his thoughts. And then we also have these 2 other characters sitting directly behind Vampire Bill. They are drainers. They drain vampires for their V juice or blood, because it's rare and very expensive and high, and people can get killed for doing this. And so they end up draining Bill out in the parking lot. Sookie comes to the rescue. And this is where a nice callback to a season in the future, because Sookie kind of takes his chain and beats up one of this guy back across the back, takes him to the ground, pulls a knife on her, and Sookie kind of throws the chain basically around this guy's neck. And it's done in a way where it's like, it was very unnatural. And it comes into play later on in the series. It's more, it doesn't really come into play, it's just kind of like a nice callback. It's like, oh, that explains why it did that. But I'll explain that when it gets there. And then that's where Bill and Sookie really connect and kind of start talking about Bill and Sookie and what she is and what she isn't, and how she kind of deals with being telepathic. And it's just really cool how this first episode, all the characters kind of intertwined rather quickly for a 60-minute episode. And then the episode ends with Sookie being just beaten to death by the 2 drainers who she defended Bill. And then that's where the second episode comes into play, as they were basically beating Sookie to death. Bill comes to the rescue, kills the 2 drainers, and they go off in the middle of the woods, and then Bill forces Sookie to drink his blood to heal her. And that's where this episode kind of goes from there. It's like Sookie dealing with the effects of drinking Bill's blood, and as well as finding more about Bill and what time period he was turned. He was turned during the Civil War era, and then he had this little get-to-know-you kind of dinner with Sookie and Jason and Tara, and as well as their grandmother. I mean, Jason and Sookie's grandmother. Tara was just kind of along for the ride. And they just start inquiring about him. And I do have to give props to Jason a little bit, because he didn't back down. He just kind of he just threw in barbs out there towards Bill, and Bill just kind of like threw them back at him in his face. And then their grandmother just kind of like, shut up, Jason. And it's a pretty interesting scene. And so Bill and Sookie just kind of go off in the middle of the woods, and they do this thing. Vampires are able to glamour people, kind of put like a small trance on them in order to do their bidding, and it doesn't work on Sookie. And Bill is taken way back by this, like, why will it not work on you? And it's like, Sookie, I don't know. And that's really all that happens in this episode. And they see Bill's house, and reveals that he's trying to get electricity on, and the VRA, the Vampire Rights Amendment, and trying to get them to have rights and to vote and stuff like that, I think. I mean, just normal human rights for the vampire community. And he can't even get electricity on, so Sookie kind of takes upon herself to get some numbers for electricians to come out. And that's where this episode ends, is Sookie on Bill's front doorstep, and 3 different vampires kind of come out and kind of start showing their fangs, and it just ends right there. And that's what I have to give props to True Blood, because True Blood has some of the best episode cliffhangers of all time, and I'll get more into a particular one later on. So that's really all I gotta say about these 2 episodes. A lot happened, a lot of introductory scenes, and a lot of like plot devices, like Maudette was killed, and we have to find that killer. Then V-Juice comes into play as well. And I mean, just a lot happens in these 2 episodes that will carry on to more episodes later on in the season, and as well as seasons beyond. So That's really all I gotta say. Thank you for watching this video. Please click subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at one and only MSJ. And as always, my name is Max James, and I'm gonna go geek out.